The competition is heating up in your fantasy football league, and as you try to pull away or play catch-up with a grueling week of trades, waiver pickups, and lineup tweaks, don't forget, let your loved ones know that you're still breathing with bouquets from 1-800-Flowers.com. Take it from me, nothing tops the excitement of a 1-800-Flowers bouquet, and right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, 1-800-Flowers will give you another dozen absolutely free. That's 40% off the original price. This beautiful bouquet of 2 dozen roses in a rainbow of colors will leave your loved one stunned without spending a fortune. It's the best of both worlds. Amazing roses at an unbeatable price. These gorgeous roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. A dozen multicolored roses for $29.99 plus another dozen free. It's an incredible deal and a small price to pay with all your fantasy league winnings. There's 1-800-Flowers.com and there's everybody else. You know who I trust when the game's on the line. To order a dozen multicolored roses plus an extra bouquet for just $29.99, go to 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/Mike.
America, it's time for some straight talk. You love your phone. Look at you. You hardly put it down. But you don't love that expensive wireless plan, do you? So what if I told you can keep that phone network and number 2 for a lot less? Well, this is me telling you. It's time to switch to Straight Talk, guys. Bring your own phone and get unlimited plans starting at just $45 a month on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
Yeah, here we are. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, like Donovan McNabb, who's in our studio now. Carl Douglas will join us later in this hour, former attorney for OJ Simpson, who was released from prison over the weekend. And it is a morning filled with a ton of sports news. A baseball playoffs start tomorrow, and all the football, college, and pro. And there's a bunch of basketball stuff out there, like Russell Westbrook's contract and everything else. But if you are just waking up and are not aware, we've certainly had one eye all morning long on the tragic events in Las Vegas, Nevada, a city that so many Americans so enjoy going to. And last night at a country music festival, Mike, which again hits so close to home for you, I know.
Jason Aldean, they're finishing up on that, and then, boy, all hell broke loose.
Circumstances just become so tragic. A man just opens fire from a hotel room nearby. At last count I had seen, there were 50 that were dead. Making this the worst mass shooting in modern American history, which are words that are difficult even to say. And so, Donovan, you're just joining us here. We've talked about it a bit this morning. At times like this, it's very difficult to know what to say. And on a show like this, I assume if people are tuning to us in the morning, they want us to talk about football and get their minds off this, and that's what we'll do. But Mike, you and I have had a chance just to briefly this morning to try and wrap our heads around the horror of what took place overnight. You wake up in the morning and think, my goodness, it's just unimaginable.
That's the thing. You can't wrap your head around it. People going there for a concert to have have a great time, and next thing you know, what they think is fireworks going off is actual gunshots until they see people laying around them, either killed or injured, and which then you get the amazing human spirit of people helping other people, get to safety or get to ambulances then as the first responders are doing what they do best, running into danger to try and protect people. But we always talk about the human spirit and how it shows in a situation like this, but you hate talking about it because you don't want a situation like this. You don't want some deranged lunatic up 32 stories up just firing away at people. God knows what the reason is. By the way, the shooter was killed in this. And I mean, it just blows my mind away what can be so wrong with a person to just take lives of somebody, of people he doesn't even know. It's sickening to think of, in that matter of a couple of minutes, the lives that have been lost and lives that have been changed forever.
The unfortunate situation is the fact that you're there to have a good time, and some were there with their families, some were there with their with their wives or friends or whatever it may have been, and to have fire being just exploded off into a crowd. I mean, for one, he's 32 stories up. You don't know where it's coming from. Yeah. You see some of the video and people hit the ground, which you're supposed to do, and then all of a sudden there's a crowd of people running. So you worry and you pray for the people who may have been trampled, for those who have been shot, those who have been killed. So the only thing I think for all of us to do at this particular point is to pray for the families. For those who were shot or those who were killed or were involved, to pray for them and just hope that things will come out for the better, and just pray for blessings over their whole families.
The latest update that I have is headlined "At least 50 dead, 400 injured."
400 injured, yeah. After
mass shooting in Las Vegas. And so, again, there are any number of places where they can cover this sort of news far better than we could or would here. So we just offer our thoughts, and then we'll move on. And again, we'll do our football show here as we would any other Monday, because we assume if you're choosing to spend this Monday morning with us, it's because you want to hear us doing that. So, Donovan, we'll make the transition to that. And let's just start with the young quarterback and give it up for Deshaun Watson. I have a statistic that is remarkable. Mm-hmm. He is averaging the second longest pass of any quarterback in the NFL. His passes are going over 10 yards downfield on average. Only one quarterback is throwing the ball down the field more than he is. So they have opened up the playbook for this kid who comes in right out of college. Again, I mean, the book on him was he's got all this experience and played big games and all that, so you figured he's pro-ready. And Bill O'Brien has opened up that playbook and given him most of it, and he is rising to the occasion. What a start for Deshaun Watson.
It's funny because, now we're looking at Coach Bill O'Brien as one of the quarterback whisperers. He has a great eye for quarterbacks.
He's had plenty to whisper
Well,
to.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the quarterbacks that he's had, I mean, really, what has he done with them? He hasn't really groomed a quarterback into becoming a future star. This kind of landed in his hands. And I remember at the draft, I said that I wanted Andy Reid to draft Deshaun Watson, because when you have a talent like Deshaun, who's not only he's intelligent, he's a guy that's balanced in the pocket. I think last year at Clemson, he was trying to do too much, which you start to see him turning the football over a little bit more than we've seen 2 years ago. And I thought if he got with a coach who would teach him not only about being in the pocket, but to allow him to be himself. And I think that's something that Bill O'Brien is starting to see. I don't think that he designed this offense around Deshaun Watson. And that's a lot of problems with a lot of coaches in the NFL. They think their offense is God, and whoever plays the quarterback will be able to flourish in it. And we've seen quarterbacks fail in that offense in Houston. Now, all of a sudden, you have a talent that you call a play. If it's not there, he can make a play for you. And that's why you see a lot of passes that are over 10 yards, because of his ability to extend the play. Now, they're not used to that in Houston. You start to see, Hopkins, you start to see Fuller, who came back, their tight ends, their running backs. They're benefiting from it because of his ability to extend the play. Just imagine 2 years from now, when he's really comfortable in this offense, can sit in the pocket and just deliver it like we've seen 2 years ago when he just tore up the collegiate level.
Well, what's next in a guy like that when you watch him play and he's playing extremely well? What's next in the development stages for him?
What's next is that his confidence continues to rise. Bill O'Brien designs that offense around his ability.
I like what they're doing in Tennessee around Mariota.
Exactly. And that was one question that everyone had about Mariota, because he didn't take the ball from center. Can he be able to adjust to the 3-step, 5-step, 7-step drop? And it's not about that. It's about you drafting a guy who you can design an offense from what he's comfortable with, a la what we seen with RG3 when Shanahan all of a sudden came with that Baylor offense. Then they just completely threw that out the window, and I don't know what the heck happened. But if you stay with the plan, and the plan is to continue to develop the quarterback that you have and build around him, then things will happen the way you expect it to. Because think about this. You have one of the top defenses in the league in Houston. You have J.J. Watt, you have Jadeveon Clowney, you have Merciless. I mean, you have guys who can play. And if they can get this guy the ball back, who not only can throw the ball from the pocket, he's smart, he's a leader, but he also can create plays himself. Now, all of a sudden, you start to see 30, 40-yard bombs downfield where defenses are afraid to blitz this guy, because not only can he get the ball out and read the blitz, but he also can create and make one guy miss, and all of a sudden it's a big play.
They have a huge game coming up next weekend. They're the Sunday night game, and they will be taking on Kansas City. We'll see if the Chiefs remain unbeaten after they play tonight. They're currently the only unbeaten team in the league. They also have Seattle coming up in the next few weeks, so he'll get to see some good defenses. So we'll see. So far, so good for Deshaun Watson. Mike and Mike, Donovan McNabb is in our studio with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. We opened the show this morning talking a lot about New England.
Right.
And the struggles of that Patriot defense. Again, they're giving up points like crazy. All 4 weeks they've allowed 300 yards passing.
Right.
But the first thing you said to me was you took more out of that game yesterday from the Carolina side than the New England side.
I know that we look at, New England as the gold standard. We know that, that Tom Brady's the GOAT. We've seen the success that they've had, and some of them have been a part of it, unfortunately. But the whole thing about it, I look at it in a sense because a lot of people have turned their back on Cam Newton. A lot of people were so happy to see Cam struggling in the beginning of the season. The man is coming off of a surgery. He's trying to get himself in rhythm. And offensively, what I seen from Carolina was the fact that they ran the football. Now, it wasn't the 10, the 8, the 12-yard gains. It was the fact that they continued to run the football, which opens things up in the passing game. And what did they decide to do? They bunched. That means they put 3 receivers in, they motion McCaffrey, which everyone knows what McCaffrey can do. And all of a sudden, you've seen guys running open. Well, let's give a little credit to what Carolina's offensive coordinator and Cam Newton decided to diagnose versus this New England defense. Now, they're not the same defense that we've seen over years, but they have never been the explosive type of defense to really shut you down. They're bend but don't break type of defense. And so for Carolina, I look at it in a sense, this may be something going forward for Carolina and Cam Newton because this is a confidence builder. You talk to Funches and with the comments that he made about, no, this was about us. We came into this game expecting to win. And so for Funches, for Benjamin, losing Ted Ginn, who was going to step up, but then they have younger guys all of a sudden filling the role, and McCaffrey and Stewart. So for me, they have a top defense with Kuechly and Davis. But on offense, this might be a catapult for the rest of the season.
So 29 runs, 29 passes to go along with what you said. I completely agree. Does Cam Newton have to, because I know because of the nicks, the shoulder,
right,
or the ankle, the nicks, they say they don't want him to run as much. You're just going to have to kind of throw caution to the wind and say he's got to be what he is. And if that means, like yesterday, he ran 8 times for 44 yards. Now, not all designed runs, obviously. He's scrambling, moving around. But for them to be as good as they can be, does Cam just basically have to be Cam?
No, I don't think so. From what I've seen, I see Cam developing into that pocket passer. And that was the question that I had because I thought they were doing entirely too much to Cam early on in his career with this read option, this quarterback draws, these power plays for the quarterback.
That's when he was MVP when they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's great and that's sexy. But for a quarterback, in order for you to be successful, you got to play from the pocket. And we're seeing Deshaun Watson. We just talked about Deshaun Watson. Can play from the pocket, but the ability to extend the play. That's what makes Aaron Rodgers who Aaron Rodgers is. Aaron Rodgers can play from the pocket, but if he gets outside the pocket, boy, it's a problem for defenses. So think about a 6'5", 250-pound quarterback and Cam Newton with a strong arm. Once he gets the comfort level of being in the pocket, getting the ball out to his bigger, taller receivers, then all of a sudden that added dimension, that kills defenses more than him just running power and running in the linebackers 10 to 15 times a game.
How much does losing your tight end hurt? Your quarterback?
It hurts that offense.
Yeah.
It hurts that offense, but it also helps that offense. And I say this because I mentioned it about Matthew Stafford. Once Calvin Johnson left, it helped Matthew Stafford because now you see the whole field. Mm-hmm. There's a comfort level that he and Greg Olsen have, and rightfully so. Every quarterback has their tight end. But now you have to focus on the rest of the guys as well, running their routes. And there were a lot of times when Kelvin Benjamin or Funches or Ted Ginn was wide open, but he felt that comfort level going to Greg Olsen, especially in critical situations. Now he has to trust the guys on the outside, including McCaffrey, which I think will make him a better quarterback.
It's a really interesting division. Mike and Donovan McNabb in our studio here were presented by Progressive Insurance, guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And a reminder, tomorrow morning at this time, we'll be talking with Paul Feinbaum, getting his reaction to all the college football over the weekend, LSU coaching stuff, USC losing to Washington State, and a whole lot more. AFC West has become a very interesting division. We'll see if Kansas City can remain unbeaten tonight. Raiders suddenly off back-to-back losses, and we'll see if Derek Carr is banged up.
Yeah.
Denver's defense looks fantastic.
Outstanding.
Chargers can't find a way to win a game. What do you make of that division and the top of it?
I said Kansas City would win that division. I thought Denver would finish second and Oakland would finish third. Now, I know everyone jumped on the bandwagon about Oakland, and rightfully so. They're exciting. They're young. But, you have Amari Cooper who's dropping too many passes. They can't run the football. Offensive line is not what it was last year. Crabtree and the rest of the receiving core, it seems like they're just a step behind with David Carr. Now, you look at Derek Carr.
Right.
He's definitely not.
Then
Derek
we have
Carr.
to see how his injury is as well.
Well, that's another thing. And then you look on the defensive end. The question for me was never about really the front seven of the Oakland Raiders. It was more the back end, their secondary. Would they be able to hold up? No, it's not the secondary of the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos front seven and their secondary, they're special.
Yes,
they're special. And for Trevor Siemian, basically what you have to tell Trevor Siemian is protect the football and just manage the game the right way. Their running back situation, with Anderson finally healthy, and then Jamal Charles.
Yep.
Listen, I know that people kind of just threw Jamal Charles away because of leaving Kansas City. He brings another dimension to their running game. Their screen game will be outstanding with Jamal Charles running, and him running in between the tackles. You've seen it a little bit the last 2 weeks. He's getting explosives back, and I think for the Denver Broncos, I'm excited to see about that division because it's about the top two in Kansas City and Denver. But, I mean, the Chargers are just 2 games away from being 3-1.
Yep, they are. They lost all their games by an average of 5 points.
Yeah, I mean, if the field goal kicker, which we all love field goal kickers, don't we?
Yes, we do, don't we?
Yeah, I'm telling you, if it just made the field goal, things will be in the right direction. But I love the AFC West. I think Kansas City will eventually win that division, but it's going to come down to the last 4 weeks of the season. 2
teams right now that are 3-1. I'm just saying this. They both certainly can. Only one can make the playoffs. Will it be the Bills or the Rams?
It's in the NFC because of the way it is. I think it will be the Rams. I think the AFC is going to be so tough. We just talked about 2 out of the AFC West. You think about New England. You have to probably take into account maybe another one. But I just think they're going to be on the last one standing in Buffalo. And I think the Rams at this particular point, and I said this because everybody, again, threw away Jared Goff. Jared Goff getting with McVay and that offense, and I've been in that offense where if you're just a pure passer, that offense is suited for you. I mean, if they don't pay Kirk Cousins in Washington, he's going to San Francisco. Because Brian Hoyer's putting up decent numbers, but they just don't have the total team yet. But for what you see out there in with the Rams, great defense. They're still struggling a little bit at times stopping the run, but great defense. And then now Todd Gurley starts to look like Marshall Faulk now because he can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Rams are for real. I do. We'll see if the fans there start getting on board with it. If not, they should play the second half.
It's L.A. I mean,
Play the second half of the season in St. Louis. I mean, people got to come to these games. You're talking about a really good team. And a Seattle team, I know they wind up opening it up on Indy in the fourth quarter last year.
Yeah, but they're still Indianapolis. Right. Yeah, they do not look right. Their offensive line's not as good as, what we seen last night. Their defense still, I mean, they're allowing too many big plays at the wrong time. Now, they'll shut it down before you get in the end zone. But for this offense, I've seen flashes of them running the football, but their passing game is just not consistent. And that's the whole thing that I'm looking at. When you're talking about week 12, week 13, week 14, if you're not running the football, that play-action game really suffers at times.
Well, I mean, let's throw in there quickly with that offensive line for Seattle has struggled. They lost the left tackle, Reese Odiambo, went to the hospital after the game. He had heart issues. Carson, the kid that was taken over at running back.
He got banged up.
Air cast. He's gone.
Yeah.
Lane, the cornerback, gets hurt. Cliff Averill, the defensive end, gets hurt as well. So that's really been a struggle. We talk about Green Bay a lot. Everybody gets hurt. I get it. But there's always 1 or 2 teams that become more of a mass unit than any others. One other thing, I'm sorry, Grant, I wanted to ask you. So next Monday, as next week comes about, next week's games come Monday Night Football, Minnesota goes to Chicago. If the coaching staff feels that Mitch Trubisky can handle the offense, is he your starter?
No. I still stay with Glennon.
Why?
Now, because their offense is not really just on Mike Glennon. Their wide receivers aren't creating separation. I like Zach Miller. I like their tight end. I like their running backs. But you have to think, you're just not going to sit there and pound the football. That's not really their DNA. So if you put a young quarterback in there, what is that going to do? Get people excited for the first couple of weeks, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, here we go. Interception again.
But let me just throw this in real quick. As Herm Edwards sat there, right now Mike Glennon, 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Herm Edwards said, I can get a rookie in there to throw interceptions.
Yeah, so get a rookie in there. And
let him do it and at least start to learn and get some play as well.
First of all, I don't think John Fox has another year to survive and say, well, let's let the rookie just kind of develop. This has to be a situation where if you decide to go with Trubisky, which I think the best thing for them to do is wait another 2 weeks to do it, And I think in 2 weeks, do they play at home?
They have the Vikings this week at home. Then they go to the Ravens. Then they're home with the Panthers.
Wait till Carolina.
Wait till Carolina
to kind of do it, because I was a part of it in Minnesota where you wanted to make it a big splash. And I think for everyone in Chicago, just allow Glennon he might win one of the 2 games. Then make the decision to come home, get the crowd excited, give them something to think about. Now you have another 12 weeks or so to allow this young man to develop. And then probably at the end of it all, John Fox will be fired and they'll get a new offensive coordinator.
Well, now learn the question. What's happening. And one last thing for you, D-Mac. I know that you took a lot of heat last week for saying on First Take that the Falcons were overrated.
Yeah.
Now they lose yesterday, albeit with the injuries. They finished the game without Julio Jones, without Mohamed Sanu.
Right.
But if you look at the totality of their season, how close they are to being 1-3.
Well, and they played a formidable defense. They played a defense that can get to the quarterback, and you've seen it. Now we start to focus a little bit on their offensive line. Is it their offensive line? They're not as good as we think they are. Julio Jones goes down. Sanu goes down. Who's going to step up? Those are the questions that you have just on offense alone. On defense, you lose Beasley. Beasley goes down. Who's going to get to the quarterback? So now you allow a guy like Tyrod Taylor to sit back in that pocket to deliver strikes. And then just think about it. If he gets outside the pocket, utilizing his legs will kill you. So for Atlanta, I said that I thought that they were overrated, mainly because I know if they battle injury, they're going to struggle. If they get in a situation where it's tough for them to win games and they don't have all of their guys and they're not in rhythm. Defensively, to me, I think it's still in question. If you decide to play man-to-man defense, that means you better get pressure up front. Because if you don't get pressure up front, you're going to get killed. And so I think for the Atlanta Falcons going forward, and I've only been a part of it, you lose the Super Bowl, hey, all the weight is on your shoulders, everyone wants to come back and repeat. It just doesn't happen the way it did for you going to the Super Bowl. It's a lot harder. So they're going to struggle. Now, good thing for them is their conference isn't strong. Now, if Carolina starts to elevate, that's going to be tough. All of a sudden, we see Drew Brees in New Orleans start to play a little better. Their defense is playing a little bit better. Yeah. Tampa, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with Tampa. I had them winning that division. So for Atlanta, at least they're in a division where everyone's trying to find themselves, and it gives them time to get back on track.
Yeah, right now there's no team in that division with a losing record, and there's no team with a negative point differential for what it's worth. Panthers and Falcons both at 3-1. Tampa 2-1. They play Thursday night against New England. And the Saints, after a bad start, are back to 2-2. Donovan McNabb over to First Take and a whole lot more. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Donovan McNabb every week with us here. Mike and Mike.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
All right, amongst all of the various sports topics that went on this weekend, among them, the OJ Simpson circumstance. Again, it's only really peripherally a sports story, but he is one of the legendary figures in football history. And by now, I'm sure you're aware that he was released from prison early Sunday morning and has been traveling through the state of Nevada. Our understanding is that he wants to go to Florida. Perhaps they don't want him there. Let's try and get some insight into this, if we can, from former OJ Simpson attorney Carl Douglas, who's been with us a couple of times over the last few months. And he rejoins us. Good morning, Carl.
Hey, Mike, how are you doing, man? Glad to have me on.
We're doing well. It's nice to chat again. And let's start with that, because you can provide some legal insight into things that we really don't know a whole lot about. We understand the circumstances that he remains on parole and everything else. Is it as simple as to say he cannot necessarily go wherever it is he would like to go from here? What are the rules when it comes to a circumstance like this if O.J. Simpson wants to make his home in Florida going forward?
Greeny, my understanding is that because he was such a model prisoner at the jail facility at Lovelock in Nevada, that Florida virtually has no rights to object to his being transferred there once all of the paperwork has been submitted. So the authorities in Nevada have to submit paperwork to Florida, and the Bureau of Prisons of Florida then virtually has to accept him there, even though the Florida AG has given words against his being transferred there.
So, Carl, let's go back again and just kind of relive for a moment. Back when you first knew you were going to be part of this whole thing back in, 94 of what was going on in the beginning with the double murder, and just it was OJ. And so you're involved in this. So just take us there for a moment from the beginning of that, just from your side of it, what you felt, what your emotions were during that time.
Well, Golic, you got to understand, man, I'm from Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, OJ Simpson was an iconic figure ever since I was a child. He was a great college football player going on to the Buffalo Bills to making great fame there. And then he transformed his sports career into really an unprecedented career as a pitchman, pitching Hertz Rent-A-Car and Chevrolets and soft drinks, and it was really a great insight for someone from the sports world to be able to transform into being a commercial pitchman as he was. He probably, man, was the most famous celebrity ever charged with murder. So it was a shock to all of us in Los Angeles when he was arrested for the crimes of those two deaths.
So then he's found not guilty of those and loses the civil case, but still he's free. I mean, he's walking the streets. How shocked were you when all of a sudden you hear of what happened in Las Vegas with, kidnapping and robbery at gunpoint and end up going to jail?
Oh, man, it was tremendously disheartening and disappointing to me to hear that he had gotten himself involved in something as petty as this sort of burglary that befell him. And it really was, in my mind, an error in his judgment, having basically been found not guilty. I was hopeful that he would go away to Florida and basically ride into the sunset.
And, of course, that isn't what happened. So now he is out and he'll try and well, we don't know exactly what he'll do. What is your sense of what his future may hold? What contact have you had with him? What role have you played, if any, in his life in the last decades? And what is your expectation for where he goes from here?
Greeny, I have not had any contact with OJ. The last time I saw him, man, was in April of 2005. At the West Angeles Church of God in Christ in Los Angeles. That was the setting for Johnny Cochran Jr.'s funeral. And there was one of the speakers there that first asked everyone who had ever worked for Johnny Cochran, please stand up. And many in the audience stood up then. Then they asked anyone who had ever been represented by Johnny Cochran, please stand up. And I looked to my right, and there was OJ standing up, and a few seats away was Michael Jackson. It was indeed a sight that I will never forget. But since that time, OJ basically went to Florida, and I expect eventually that he is going to petition and be accepted to return to Florida, where two of his kids live, where many of his friends are, and I suspect that he is then going to just take up residence there. I don't think, man, he's going to hide in some corner and cower out of the limelight. That doesn't seem to be the O.J. Simpson that I know. So he's probably then going to go out and just live his life the way he always has. He's not the kind of guy to kind of cower in a corner or to hide from anyone there. But there's going to be a new reality that I'm sure he's going to be facing with social media. He's going to be subjecting to some very stringent parole guidelines. He can't socialize with known felons. He can't drink in excess. And I fear that whenever he goes outside of his door, someone with a video camera is going to be streaming his every movement and every action. And that, I think, is the biggest thing that he must be mindful of.
Along those lines, like you say, you don't think he's going to hide away. You think he'll be out in public doing his thing. And then there's the next step, Carl. Do you think he'll try and monetize that? I know you say you haven't seen him in a long time, but just in your opinion, do you think that with those social media of today, there's also social media opportunities as well? And do you think if he tried to monetize it, he could in today's world?
Golic, I don't think so, man, because he hasn't given an interview in the last 9 years. There have been people who were guarding him who wrote books and given interviews. There have been other inmates who were at the Lovelock facility with him that given interviews. But you've heard nothing from O.J. Simpson other than the most highly publicized parole hearing in American history. So I think he's 70 years old now, having had his freedom and his liberty taken from him for the last 9 years is really a sobering circumstance. And so he understands that the Goldman and Brown families are going to be watching his every move. He understands that he can't make any money over the table without them being right there to take it from him. And I think he'll be able to live, Golic, as you know, on his NFL pension. He also has a Screen Actors Guild pension, so he's not going to be hurting for money, and I think he'll be able to maintain a comfortable existence than living off that pension, which no one can ever attach.
It's Carl Douglas with us here. Again, former OJ attorney. Carl, we appreciate the time and the insight as always. Thank you very much.
Mike, my pleasure. Please have me on again next time.
Thanks, Carl. It's Carl Douglas with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold.
It's so wild. What do you do? You know he's going to be golfing, right? What do you do if you run into him? Or if you happen to be on a golf course and there's OJ Simpson? You know, I mean, in a setting where you maybe have a chance to talk with him. It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, look, he is a free man at this point. The circumstances are what the circumstances are. I was talking to Anita Marks one time about this, and she was covering sports and living in Miami at a time when O.J. Simpson was free, before he went to jail on these most recent charges. And she said that he was basically a celebrity. Everywhere he went, people would take pictures with him and were excited to meet him and shake his hand and all that kind of stuff. So I think that to some degree that will probably continue to be the case.
You know what happens. You know, even guys like us, we get invited to these charity golf tournaments every week. We could play every week if we want to. Do you think it goes that far?
I do not.
You don't think that some tournaments will not want him there?
Because I think that a charity golf event is something that you want to ruffle as few feathers as possible.
Understood.
Right? So
but you also want to get a lot of
people who might come. You'll get attention, but I don't. For that purpose, I don't. Most of it, I don't think would be the right kind. Look, what do I know?
You're just. I just wonder because you're right. The guy has been a celebrity all his life. To what the extent that is now, I mean, I have zero clue. But in this day and age, and that's why I asked Carl, and it would be just his opinion. I know you can monetize a ton of things now. I wonder if he actually wanted to start Twitter and threw it out there, how many followers he would get. You know?
You can do these vlogs, which are extraordinarily popular now, make a bunch of money on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Now, how much of that is attachable to the families and all that, you know, of the Goldmans and the Browns? I really don't know the answers to all of those things. We'll wait and see. I think it'll be a little while before you hear anything on this. But
I think I would agree with that.
At that point, I mean, the last thing that Carl said to us, I think, is true. O.J. Simpson was never one to sort of shy away from the limelight, and I don't expect that will be the case as he goes forward either. Let me read you a couple other tweets here, speaking of which, on a variety of different topics. Deshaun Watson, Matt Kelly tweets, sometimes the NFL scouts overthink. Deshaun Watson has the it factor. No one should be surprised by this. He is special.
Let's also remember he went in the first round. Yeah. I mean, he still went in the first round. There were just a couple of quarterbacks that went ahead of him, and I'm telling you the reason why I don't think anybody took Mitch Trubisky, in this case the Bears, and said, right now, Mitch Trubisky is a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson had played in the biggest games in college the last couple of years and was shining brightly in those stages, and Trubisky started 13 games. This was a long-range pick. You have to keep that in mind, that they think that Trubisky has a higher ceiling than Watson, and that's why they took him, not for this year, but for down the road, and that's still yet to play out.
You know, this one I'm interested in. Maybe we can make this a little bigger topic tomorrow. Randy tweets, should injury management be part of a coach's job description? It seems significant injuries are on the rise in the NFL. Is there anything, like you see a guy like Dalvin Cook, it's untouched yesterday, right? He makes a cut, his knee goes. That's been happening as long as they've been playing football. A variety of other injuries obviously are of a different sort, whether it's hamstrings or broken bones. You can get hurt a lot of different ways. Is there any way of putting any of that on the way teams are practicing or the way teams are preparing?
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, when you talk about colleges, you could talk about their lifting programs. If you're getting a large amount of hamstring-type injuries, you'll look immediately to the strength coach. How do you – this is in all sports. How do you train in all the sports? Are you bulking when you should be thinning out? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at things. But to the tweeter's question of putting the coach in charge of that, absolutely not. Coaches. There are plenty of people that you can hire. NFL teams have a lot of money. And if you feel you want a professional in a certain area, you hire that person, and the coach listens to that person, just like a coach will listen when a doctor says somebody's ready to go. If you want to get performance experts, which we're seeing more and more of, actually players are hiring them on their own.
Right.
From nutrition to rest to lifting to supplements. There's all different things out there. You can't put that on the coach. Let a team hire somebody who that's their area of expertise and use that.
Felt like another terrible day for injuries yesterday, but you've made this observation, and I think you're right. Every year we say, boy, there's more injuries now than there've ever been before, and every year it's about the same as it's always been. That's just the nature of football.
It is.
All right, Monday Night Football tonight. We have Washington at Kansas City, and I'll mention again that the game is on ESPN. Y si quieres en español, it's on ESPN2.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those
sí,
el dos, el segundo.
ESPN dos.
Número dos. El segundo ESPN.
El segundo.
Para el juego esta noche.
Esta
noche, that's tonight. Esta noche tenemos un juego.
ESPN the ocho.
No, this one is el dos.
Oh.
The ocho is a different one. That was the wrench. What was that?
That was dodgeball.
Dodgeball. This one is
football. You can dodge a wrench. You can dodge a ball.
I don't know how to say that in Spanish. Either way, that's on ESPN2 tonight, and
that's
both
what we're getting at.
Broadcasts can be found on the ESPN app. The FPI gives Kansas City a 74% chance to win tonight, which would make them a 9-point favorite. Westgate makes Kansas City a 7-point favorite. So Chiefs -7 home against Washington. Golic says.
I like the Chiefs. Certainly at home, again, the best smelling stadium there is. On the road with all the barbecue, no doubt about that. So they win there. And as far as the game is concerned, give the Washington defense, man, they're not getting any recognition at all. And they are playing well. They are shutting down opponents' receivers. So if they do that, that leaves a tight end. Now, Kansas City just happens to have the best tight end, next to Gronk, depending on the injury situation with Gronk. Travis Kelce is just fantastic. He's usually good for a touchdown, a bunch of catches, and an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty per game. But also Kareem Hunt, what he's been doing, he's giving you big play. Tyreek Hill could give you a big play. Kelce can give you a big play out of that offense. That old line is gelling very, very well together. A lot of, angst on Fisher when he was a top pick. It was a left tackle, then a right tackle. They gave him the big money. We were like, why? But he's kind of solidified now at left tackle, doing a nice job. The defense, I know they lost Barry, but they're playing well. I just like what they're doing right now. I am so looking forward to this matchup of the Kansas City offense and the Washington defense, which I don't think is getting enough love. And remember the Washington offense. They can run the ball. Another good offensive line that can run the ball extremely well. Passing game, Terrell Pryor now being that number one guy. The passing game hasn't really gone, I think, how they would have liked it to go. Overall, I'm going with Kansas City. I think home helps them. I think they have that big playability that Washington has to certainly be careful of. They have 3 that can hit a big play on them. So I'll go with Kansas City. What's the point? 7? I'll give it.
Me too. I'll take Kansas City. I'll give the 7 points. And by the way, yesterday, 14 games played in the NFL. 7 of them won by true road teams. 8 of them, if you include New Orleans, which you don't, because they beat Miami in London. So, technically they were the road team, but I don't think we really count that as a road win.
Right.
But so then if you don't want to include that, that's 13 games yesterday. 7 of them won by the road team. So home field not really making a whole lot of difference in a lot of different
not really.
places.
So we'll see if that comes into play tonight. I will say again, the most important thing that happened yesterday, I evened up my record with the Nerds. They had Minnesota winning. I went with Detroit, so we're even up. The NPI, the Nerd Power Index, and me are even on the season at 2-2.
All right, have an enjoyable day. Obviously, our thoughts are with everybody in and around Las Vegas, as they have been all day. We will see you back and better than ever tomorrow. Thank you for spending part of this morning with us, Mike and Mike.
Daddy, where do babies come from? Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.